talk a bit about the reorganization of state government, because that plays into everything that's happening. When you reorganize how business is done on the state level, that's going to trickle down to every area of government. So this reorganization.
The government reorganization was, for lack of better terminology, huge this year. We saved, I think, over 300 million. The projections are anywhere from 260 to 400, but I think it'll be over 300 million. And the first thing we had to do is make sure that each department knew it did affect them. Part of the institutionalization of state government is people look and say, we believe in change as long as it's the other department or the other guy or the other person. And what we brought them to the table and said, no, this is going to affect everyone. We need to do three things. We need to consolidate. We need to consolidate where we can among departments. We need to streamline services, and we also need to improve services. So that set a rather large task for the department heads, because they're hearing two things. We need to cut back, but we also need to improve services at the same time.
And some people said that this overhaul was really long overdue, that it hadn't been looked at in quite a while.
The overhaul was long overdue, and I think we need to set it, even in good economic times, that every 3, maximum 5 years we do a review. And there's absolutely no reason that we cannot do that.
Now, there was also a review of the state tax credits, and I know the last time we spoke, we spoke in detail about the film tax incentive, and that did not pass through. It's been tabled.
Well, the positive thing is we're going to look at all tax credits. What we learned, number one, is if we made any immediate changes to the tax credit system, it would not increase the coffers for state government for years out, because tax credits are 0 to 20 years out. But what we did learn is that we do need to scrutinize every single tax credit, whether it's the film tax credit, especially because of what went wrong in the Department of Economic Development over the last 2 years, but also in research and development tax credits, which I support, but we need to review them every year. I think what happens is large companies, very large companies, take the tax credit, and it's very hard to track the job creation or retention. And on the flip side, we have many companies out at the Oakdale campus that use the tax credits that are up and starting. Some critical adult stem cell research at Cellular Engineering Technologies. They're small with 4 people, and they need that tax credit to keep moving. And they have some very exciting biomedical discoveries just right around the corner. So we have to be careful not to set back what we've started in some of the discoveries. But I think the tax credit system, which, interesting enough, a book I just finished rereading from Robert James Waller, who, yes, wrote The Bridges of Madison County, but also was a business and economics professor at Northern Iowa.
That's quite a range.
That's quite a range. And I just reread his book, and it's appropriate since we're in the Iowa Writers Workshop library here at the Marriott. But he said that tax credits are something you need to have, but you also need to scrutinize on a yearly basis. And companies have to be able to walk in and prove exactly how many jobs were created, how many jobs were retained, and maybe the wage level of those jobs. So he was a proponent, or is a proponent, of the tax credit system, but he was also a strong proponent of yearly review.
Well, it seems appropriate that the tax incentives would be reviewed at the same time that there's a government reorganization, because what seems to have happened was that there wasn't the oversight. There wasn't actually the staff in place needed to manage such a large tax incentive. So many people were taking advantage of it, and ultimately we just needed more hands on deck. So,
well, that is what we found, is that in everyone's eagerness to get programs up and running, we got the startup, we got to the middle, but we didn't have that final third section, and that's a section of overview and review to make sure that people were following through on the contracts that they signed. So I think it's very important that we do that, and I think what you'll see over the next 2 years is a little more open government in terms of tax credits, a website that you'll be able to go to and say, this business used this tax credit, and this is exactly what the taxpayer investment got from that.
Now let's talk about open government. You just mentioned that. That's been a big buzzword lately on a national level and on a state and even local level. People want to know that the discussions that they're seeing, perhaps on their local television station or in the newspaper, that they're privy to some of the conversations behind the scenes, some of those work meetings and things like that. I know that Iowa City and Coralville have different approaches to broadcasting and their work meetings,
sessions.
their work sessions. So let's just talk a little bit about that concept of open government.
Well, and you mentioned two levels, the local level, cities and counties, and then there's a state level that I'm involved in. Now, we've worked with a couple bills this year to outline what we think cities and counties should do to promote open government. Now, while I agree with those 100%, the problem I have with our legislation is it doesn't include us, is that we're telling local entities how to have open government, how to maintain open government, and how to get information to citizens, but we don't practice what we preach all the time. So I think what we need to do is craft legislation, or not, if we can't include ourselves. But work sessions, I think, would be good for the citizens to see. I think what's important, though, too, is asking citizens to watch the whole work session. That if you have the time, watch the whole hour during the work session so you get the whole discussion and some of the ideas thrown out there. If you only watch a snippet, you may not know truly how someone feels about a project or taxes or the budget. So we need to get the information out, and I think there's better ways to do it on websites also. It's something that I find more and more citizens interested in over the last 2 years than I've experienced in previous years.
Well, it's the information age, the more opportunities that people have to obtain information that's informing the decisions of the people who are ultimately going to be making the laws. I think people will be taking advantage of that the more it becomes available.
Well, and people expect immediate responses too now, because when I started in the legislature, people would send snail mail or even an email, and I always like to get back to them within 48 hours. Now, as quick as technology works with our phones and iPods and Blackberries and everything else, people will send you another email saying, well, I sent you a text or an email an hour ago and you haven't responded yet. So we're in an immediate technology age where people want to hear from you on I would say, a more timely basis, but you try to get back to people as soon as you can. But you're right. Information moves very quickly, and sometimes information from yesterday is old news.